everybody, DM Jim here, and welcome to a new episode of the Tabletop Engineer. Over the last month, I have been building my Goblin fortress. Now, this started back in episode 29 with my watchtower, about that tall. Actually, it's right back there, about this tall, and it was not intended to be a standalone. I meant to build more of them, but I got sidetracked. And so anyway, I'm glad to have been able to get back to it because I've been adding bigger pieces to it, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback from you. A lot of you have made your own versions, which I love to see. The Goblin fortress or the Goblin pieces are very easy to make. Most of it is chipboard and dowels or skewers or toothpicks. Very inexpensive to make, and because the Goblin stuff tends to look, not so well designed, you can make mistakes and they don't look like mistakes. And believe me, I've made mistakes on this, but nobody's called me out on it yet. So anyway, I am glad to finally be done with my Goblin fortress for now. Today is the last part of the puzzle. Some of you have had guesses, but so far nobody has guessed correctly. So what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to watch me make the final piece of my Goblin fortress. I hope you like it. I will return to the Goblin stuff down the road, but for right now I'm done with it. But let's go take a look at what I have for you this week. I began this project by buying a swatch of camouflage fabric from the fabric store. It was a remnant, so it was very cheap. I think it was like $4. And I just glued a whole bunch of little fragments of it over a foam ball after cutting them into pieces. Then I tacked the actual base of the blimp. I knew it needed to fit inside the barracks or on top of the barracks, so I started with a small base using some very small dowels. I basically created a standing base. It's on stilts, and it has 4 balconies that will extend out of it that the goblins you can put a mini on, and that would be the direction that they're attacking. And then again, I just used chipboard to just cover it anywhere that I felt it needed to be covered. I left some doorways open and a hole in the top where I'll put a ladder for the goblins to get up to the top level. You'll see when it's done that it's actually basically 2 levels. But again, it's just a lot of cutting of chipboard and gluing, cutting and gluing. And I'm about done with gluing and cutting chipboard for a while, so I'm kind of glad this was my last one. The thing started to look more and more like a little mini fortress, and then I tackled the ball. As you can see here, I took some thread, some silver thread, and just glued it northwest, east, and south, 3 strands each, and I used hot glue for this to hold them in place. Then I hit the base with the burnt sienna, and then went over it with some very light gray to age it. Then I returned to the actual blimp part. Now, these are called floral wires. They're very thin, but they're actually pretty sturdy. They bend, but they hold their shape. I cut 4 pieces of it at equal length, and at the 4 corners of the top of the base, here it is, floral wiring. At the top of the base, I glued these 4 pieces you'll see in a second why I did this. Now, the 3 strands that come off the north, east, west, and south, I basically gathered them like I'm doing here, and then I applied a drop of hot glue, and I twisted the 3 wires so the glue would get down in, and I just waited a few seconds for it to dry, and basically this just made it easier for me to have something to hold on to, one thing instead of 3 strands of string. There are 4 wooden posts at the corners. Now here's the first one. It's very hard to see. They're very, very small and thin. But I placed a good bit of hot glue on the wood beam there, right there. And then I held the wire in place. Now the wire sticks up about 3 or 4 inches. And you want to leave enough length because it's going to be glued to the actual foam blimp. Here I am again gluing another one of the wires. So after all 4 wires were glued to the 4 corners there, I was able to take the cloth-covered foam piece and apply some hot glue and attach those 4 green wires so that it sort of holds the balloon and makes it look like it's floating. And right here's where I'm doing that. The downside is it leaves some hot glue visible, So what I did was when this was done, I wrapped the thread around the green wire to hide it, and glued some cloth strips to cover the hot glue, and then I hit the whole thing with a dark wash. So there you go. The last piece in my Goblin Fortress is the ability for the goblins to take the war to the humans. This one was actually fun to make. I will be honest, the balloon was a little finicky getting it to float without any visible supports. If you notice real carefully in the video, I used these, they're called floral wiring. They're very thin wires, but pretty strong. They can certainly hold the weight of foam covered in cloth. And basically I glued 4 curved pieces along these, along here, and then I wrapped them with the thread. I had this silver thread that I got. I glued on the top and then wrapped 3 strands at the north, south, east, and west direction. I made a little mistake. They're not perfect. Like you can see how this one right here sort of has to go that way in order to attach to this post. But it just gives it that much more of, you know, they didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what I was doing. The hardest part, believe it or not, was the foam ball. Here is my original, this is what caused the delay in getting this video out. Oh, one just fell off. I mean, they don't stick very well. I went with 50-50 white glue water and let it dry, and then they just basically peeled off. Then I went with the spray adhesive, which I can't get the can right now. Spray adhesive, that didn't work. I ended up basically having to go with tacky glue, smearing it all over 1/2 with the finger and then sticking it on, and it had to dry overnight. But it worked. I mean, it held together. And then basically I just cut a bunch of scrap pieces that I used later to cover up like hot glue dots where the green wire was glued to the foam. I covered it with more patches and basically just gave it this scraps of cloth, whatever. But the tower, I mean, the balloon is nice. There's 4 entryways for the goblins to get in, and then, you know, they come up through the center, and then they can attack on all 4 sides through these little towers or balconies here. And of course, I haven't done the ladder yet. There'll be a ladder that goes up into the top here to maintain the balloon. The balloon is lacking in the entry for the hot air. There's no flame or anything like that, but you know, you get the basic idea. The other idea is that it would be small enough to land, you know, right here on the top part. So very fun to do. I hope you liked it. I am not done with the goblin stuff. I'll be doing some later down the road, but for right now I'm going to take a break from the goblin stuff. But this was a nice little finishing touch for the Goblin Fortress. I hope you liked it. Next week I'll have another how-to video for you, and it's going to be, I believe, the first of 3 parts, maybe 4, but I think it'll be 3 parts. It's going to be another series, not Goblin, and each piece will add to the next, but individually they can be used separately, and you'll know what I mean once I release the video next week. So anyway, that's all I have for you this week. Please check out my Facebook page, The Tabletop Engineer. We have a lot of discussions going on over there. I share a lot of stuff that's not done elsewhere. I do a lot of live, Facebook Live videos. Recently I've been painting minis. As a matter of fact, today, this afternoon, I'm hoping to paint a mini. What else? I still release the Monday magic item, the Tuesday monument, and the Thursday relic. These are free cards in PDF form. You can print them out on cardstock and laminate them. They're basically free every week. I make them available on the Facebook page as well as my Patreon page. Speaking of Patreon, patreon.com/The Tabletop Engineer is where you will go to subscribe to Bexham's Bazaar magazine. Bexham's Bazaar number 2 will release on February 1st. It's coming. Issue number 1 is already out. If you want to subscribe, it's only $2 a month. $2 a month. And it's a great magazine, in my opinion. I've got a lot of contributors who are feeding me stuff to put in it. It's about, the first issue was about 76 pages. The second issue is probably going to push 80, well over 80 pages, I believe. And it's got some good guest contributors that I think you're going to really enjoy. So anyway, if you have any questions, please post them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to them. Thanks again for paying attention to my 4-part, or actually 5-part Goblin series, and I'll be back next week with a new one, okay? Take care. Bye-bye.